Right.
All right, welcome to the fifth episode of The Fiver. I have another one of my favorite coworkers that I have missed dearly because I have been hunkered down in my house with my dogs and my wife for the last 33 days, I believe. Um, Jen works at a inpatient mental health hospital with myself. Um, I do discharge planning. She does care coordination. I used to do care coordination too. Um, but yeah, so she was willing to chat with us today. She also works with Trevor, who you can watch on episode 4.
Yeah.
It's funny that I have episodes.
Yes, you're so fancy.
Yeah,
So legit.
Um, all right, so Jen, question number 1 of the Fiver. You're LCSW?
I am LCSW as of just a couple months ago. I finally got my full license.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Fun.
Yeah.
Means a bump up in pay too.
Yes, we were able to actually celebrate before all the quarantine stuff. So I got to go out and have dinner in a restaurant, like a real restaurant.
A real boy. You're like a real boy.
A real one. Yes.
So how did you end up at Mountain Crest? How did you end up getting an LCSW? Take me through your story.
Yes, I feel like I have to defend my people. I heard the trash talking about the social workers the previous episode. Just kidding. I know our grad programs don't have the clinical. Yeah, how did I end up?
You're a good clinician.
Thank you.
Just because you're an LCSW doesn't mean you're a bad clinician. So
I'll send you a tip for saying that. Thank you. Yeah, I always was kind of empath as a kid. I was kind of socially awkward and shy, but I was fascinated by people, and I was reading psych textbooks for fun when I was 12, probably. Family thought that was a weirdo. But yeah, I sort of always thought about doing something kind of along the helping profession line. But I also really love storytelling. And so actually for a while when I was in college, I thought I was going to go back to Los Angeles, where I'm from, and work in film production and be a personal assistant. But I had a couple of opportunities to intern at Universal Studios and realized I don't want this life. It's a lot of uncertainty. You're employed for 2 or 3 or 4 months if you're lucky, and then you're laid off, and then it's just a whole thing. But anyway, when I was in undergrad, I was studying psychology because I figured it was a topic I was interested in, and had the opportunity to work in psych research for 12 years. And then, yeah, I worked for a university that was doing academic psych research. And and so through that, I just kind of got to meet a lot of different mental health professionals. And back then in California, we didn't have LPCs. It wasn't a recognized program or degree or license. So it was either marriage and family therapy, which is what my husband is, or social work. And so I just kind of got to interview, informal interviews, kind of meet up with people for coffee that worked in the field and sort of learn more about social work, and really liked a lot of the core values of social justice and strength-based and efficacy and all that stuff. And so I did my master's in social work at San Diego State. And then I grew up in Southern California, lived most of my life there. But I always say my great-grandparents on my mom's side were from Colorado. And I've always loved trees and not the smog of Los Angeles and not the plastic surgery and image focus and all that stuff. So and then when I met my husband, he grew up in the mountains in Lake Tahoe. And so we just always really liked Colorado. And my older sister's been out here for, 15 years maybe or something. And so when I graduated with my MSW, then we finally kind of made the switch and were able to move out here. So he got a job at Colorado State, and that's what got us out here. And then through his coworkers at CSU, they were kind enough to kind of introduce me to different people in social services kind of field out here. And I got to know different jobs and agencies, and kind of Mountain Crest was highly recommended, and our supervisor was highly recommended. And I'd worked in enough bad work situations where I'm like, I know I want a good supervisor. So they had a per diem spot open up. And so I interviewed and got that, and then did that for maybe a year and a half or almost 2 years, I think, before this kind of a full-time position open up. So now Trevor and I are kind of job share. I work the front half of the week and he works the back half, and then we trade off weekends. So yeah, it's been awesome. It's kind of how I got here.
So you use the term social justice. I know what that means.
Sure.
I don't know if a lot of other people exactly know what that means, because
Sure.
who knows what my audience is.
Sure. Totally fair.
What do you mean by social justice?
So social justice, kind of social work, like I think you said in another episode, like in social work, we look not only at kind of like an individual, but kind of the systems around them. And so social justice kind of applies to kind of taking a critical lens, kind of looking at different systems, organizations, things like that, that can be unjust sometimes. And so kind of doing things that try to balance the scales a little bit more for folks, or advocate. Like that's a big piece of social work, is advocacy, and kind of empowering individuals to be their own advocates, as well as kind of speaking up to systems that don't always help, or not always the most empowering or effective for people. So yeah. So I don't know, I guess, I don't know if that's a good definition of social justice, but I think it's just kind of looking at inequalities and kind of trying to make things better through supporting people.
So it sounds like the whole social justice aspect, and you deciding to go into social work, you want to make sure that people are heard, taken care of, that we all get our fair share, and that we're all taking care of each other.
Yeah, because I think when I talked with, like marriage and family therapists or psychologists, like I love counseling, and that's part of how I'm at Mountain Crest too, because I love the idea of promoting mental wellness and well-being and stuff. But when I thought about kind of more traditional route of doing a marriage family therapy private practice, I sort of thought like, okay, but if a person comes to me and they're homeless, or they're dealing with addiction, or they're food insecure, like all these other things, like I can't imagine just doing individual counseling. Like I'm glad there's people that do that, and also I sort of wanted to be part of bigger systems, I guess, kind of helping out with a holistic approach to well-being, and not just the presenting symptoms, so to speak, but kind of looking at the whole person in the environment is a big part of social work emphasis, is that that we don't just exist in bubbles, even though right now we sort of do in a way, but we still connect to different systems. And
no, let me tell you, I have been doing a lot of counseling with butters, sprinkles.
Yes.
Like,
yes.
Guys, we got to figure this out together.
Yes.
We need to stop eating his food. Yes. So yeah, I'm learning how to become a social worker.
Good.
Being sequestered at home.
Good. We need you.
Well, that's great. And I love the fact that I get to work with people from, and it's one of the rare jobs where I get to work with people from different disciplines.
Yeah.
Social work and counseling, very different.
Yeah.
I like counseling. I like the show. I hate systems. I really hate systems.
Yeah.
And I just love the people in my life that are great at systems, because that is not my skill set.
Yeah, we all need each other, right? Like
of course,
my whole life I played team sports, and so there's always kind of like that idea of like everybody has different strengths and perspectives, and so we all need each other. So yeah, I think it's an awesome thing we get to do that at the hospital. We get to have that interdisciplinary, lots of different lenses, nurses, doctors, all that stuff.
And we never learn about that when we're going through school either.
Yeah. I had a super rich, like in my program we had 2 internships, and so my first internship was 12 months at a residential program that was serving veterans that were dealing with substance abuse and then also experiencing homelessness. And it was awesome. I mean, it was a really strong training program. We had probably 30 interns, and it was all different disciplines. So it was counseling, psychology, it was MFTs, we had addiction counselors, kind of all that stuff. And it was so cool getting to like just hear different people's takes of what they notice, because everybody notices different stuff. So
Oh, good.
yeah.
Good. All right. Question number two. You're an essential worker. I think I've talked a bit about this beforehand.
Mm.
Since I've had some health issues, I'm actually doing super good. I think I'm healthier than I've been in years. But I get sequestered at home, so I can't talk to patients. I have to hang out at home.
Mm-hmm.
But you're an essential worker. You have to go in. So you're not as isolated as all the rest of us. But your
Yeah.
life has changed like none other, I assume.
Yeah.
But how has it changed? Um, let's see. You go into the office, you take care of patients.
Mm-hmm.
How are you guys managing? What does it look like? Because I have no idea.
Yeah. Yeah. It's I mean, in some ways I feel like it's changed a lot, in other ways not as much. But and then I think the fact that, you know, like my partner, my husband works at home now, and so he's not going out. But yeah, I mean, you know, when we're at the office, we have kind of our case management office is kind of towards the front of the building. And so that's kind of an area where patients don't go. And so when we're back there, we can, you know, we can take our masks off and stuff like that. But otherwise, when we're out on the floor with patients, we're in the rooms, you know, we're still maintaining distancing and all that. Obviously, we're not getting real close, which we usually wouldn't anyway, you know. Um, but yeah, it is just kind of this weird thing. I mean, so anytime I'm on the unit around patients, I have a mask on, and so just trying to learn how to do therapy behind a mask is just a
Wow.
whole weird. You know, I work with adults in our hospital as well as adolescents, and so initially before they were restricting visitors and all that stuff, you know, we were doing family sessions still in the hospital, and I'm behind a mask, so it's like using this much of my face to try to communicate in a family session, you know, with a kiddo and parents. And yeah, just kind of a weird dynamic, and having all kinds of breakouts on my face from masks and,
Oh,
you know, all that stuff, which, you know, I know a lot of people don't even have masks, so it's a small price to pay. But yeah, I mean, it's a very different kind of experience. And I realize now like how much nonverbal sort of stuff I do usually with my face. And so I think that as it's kind of shifted, you know, in the initial part, I think it just kind of freaked out a lot of our patients that all of a sudden we were all wearing masks. And now I feel like people are a little more used to it, especially because, you know, anybody who's out in the community is wearing masks, the grocery
yeah.
store or whatever. And then obviously kind of our treatment has changed. Our groups look different than they used to. And I do group therapy, you know, every other Friday. And so that's been a whole weird experience of,
How are you doing groups now with all the social distancing and all?
yeah. So it's kind of evolved. I was actually the one doing unit groups the first day it changed, where all of a sudden we were like, nope, patients have to stay in their rooms. They can't even come out to common areas. And so I was kind of going up and down the hallway and almost doing like individual group therapy, but during group time, you know, it was a whole weird.
Yeah.
Um, Now we're able to do distancing, which depending on the unit, you know, we do it in either the day room kind of in the front, which doesn't have as much privacy though, or we do it in kind of the dining hall cafeteria, and then just all the chairs are 6 feet apart. Everybody has to wash hands before they go into group. We have to bring them in one at a time to maintain that distance, and then leave the group one at a time, and then tell everybody to wash their hands afterwards. And yeah, it's kind of different, but we're adjusting. And right now we're not doing any family sessions in person, so they're all over, you know, Teams or Zoom or that kind of
Yeah.
stuff, which is hard, you know.
Yeah.
And so yeah, yeah.
Well, the even before all of this happened, I read shoot, I forget what the book was called, but it's oh Johann Harari's book.
Hmm.
I
Okay.
think Yeah. So basically, it talks about depression and addiction, and really
Hmm.
the impetus of that is social isolation.
Yeah, yeah.
And now working in an inpatient mental health hospital with people that
Hmm.
are dealing with um, suicidal ideation, social isolation,
Hmm.
detox, things like that. Now, just for health wise, we have to isolate, and it
Yeah.
sounds awful.
Yeah, I mean, there's like this saying, like in therapy communities sometimes of like that the opposite of active addiction isn't sobriety. The opposite of active addiction is community and connection. And yeah, I mean, and one of the things we've been sort of trying to scramble to figure out too is, just with everything moving to telehealth, we have a lot of folks in the hospital that are, unhoused, and some of them don't have phones. And so, sort of just trying to find workarounds for some of the more vulnerable folks that don't have cell phones usually, and trying to
Right,
find
right.
ways there's not walk in, kind of therapy stuff. And yeah, just trying to find all that. So I
Well,
think, we're trying to spend more time in the rooms with the patients. And now we are able to have two folks out at a time in the day room so they can have a little bit of,
okay.
you know, community together, distanced, of course, and everything wiped down a million times. But yeah, it's challenging stuff. And especially I think for either people that don't have the resources of phones, or like older adults, it's been really hard, the telehealth thing. And it's a whole paradigm shift, that not everybody, some of us I think can kind of shift a little bit easier, but other people it's more challenging. So
I can only imagine because, like, I've done therapy myself and
mhm.
kind of worked through my own stuff, but being isolated is part of the reason why I'm doing this. And
Yeah.
thankfully, my wife told me I had to.
Luckily
uh,
we have partners sometimes that help us do the things
yeah,
right.
right, right. Um, but yeah, that social isolation is so tough,
Hmm.
especially for people that like thrive on that. Like, I'm not good in my head,
Yeah.
and like I've been dealing with a lot of anxiety myself,
Hmm.
and panic attacks and things
Yeah.
like that.
Yeah.
So I can't imagine people in even more acute crisis
Hmm.
than me, who has a decent sized house, dogs, and a wife,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
able to for the most part function. But yeah, uh, bless you for helping those people.
Oh, thanks. Well, I feel like that's kind of our role in any day, in our hospital, is sometimes just kind of witnessing like what people are going through, but even more so when it's kind of this unprecedented sort of times of just, I don't know, we're trying to be creative and scramble. And that's part of what I'm grateful that we work in a team, because sometimes we can kind of brainstorm together, like, what the hell do we do? Like, I don't know how to address this.
Well,
Yeah.
it's amazing too because like I've felt very isolated, obviously, because I
Yeah.
am.
Hmm.
But being able to talk to the other discharge planner, Jonathan,
Yeah.
um, and talking to people and actually feeling productive for the most
Hmm.
part, and
Yeah.
being able to actually do something. One of the fascinating things I've found is talking to all the other people um, that I make appointments with. A lot of people really just want to talk. And
Yeah.
it's so
Yeah.
nice. So
Yeah.
yeah, so like I'll talk to people at Family Medicine Center. I'll talk to people at North Range, and
Hmm.
I'll commiserate about being stuck in the house. So
Yeah, yeah. I was saying, it's been interesting too, because during this time, right now I supervise the social work intern, and she's not able to come into the hospital because the system has, put limitations for
right,
protecting students as well as protecting the resources of protective equipment. Um, but I was doing supervision with her the other day over Zoom like this. But I was saying how it's interesting, in our line of work as counselors and therapists, we always have to kind of decide how much self-disclosure, like how much we kind of share of ourselves with people. And it's been sort of interesting in this process because I feel like it's kind of promoted a little bit more self-disclosure of kind of, rather than this us versus them kind of mentality, a little bit more of like, yeah, we're all kind of feeling anxious and we're all sort of not sure what's going to happen. And, you know, sort of trying to balance like that with holding hope and sort of not
Yeah.
wanting to freak people out, but
Yeah.
also just kind of validate like, yeah, it's rough for everybody. And
all of us are in this together. This is the weirdest thing.
Yeah.
I was in grad school. It was my second week of grad school that 9/11 happened.
Wow. Yeah.
This is bigger than that.
Yeah.
This is a bigger thing than that.
Yeah. What was that like? I can imagine. That's wild.
Oh man. Okay. So
No.
This is why I talk to therapists. No, I remember waking up that morning. It was a very bright morning. I was living in Inglewood, Colorado, living in an apartment. I remember waking up and thinking, well, I don't have to go to class until like 11. So I'm just going to roll over and go back to sleep till like 9:30.
Yeah.
Because again, I was 22. So yeah, like me rolling over, going back to bed till 9:30 was great. Then I got out of bed, went into the shower. I had a shower radio, listening to KBCO. For anyone that lives in Colorado, KBCO is the best radio station that we have, 97.3. And I turned it on, and it was Coldplay's Yellow was playing.
Yep.
And that's why that's part of the reason why I'm not a big Coldplay fan, actually. Finished. It was Brett Saunders was on the radio. Wow, you're such a good therapist. You bring stuff out. Ah!
Thank you, sir. Like I do it for a living or something.
It's like you're trained.
What?
Brett Saunders said, we're gonna just start playing KOA right now. KOA is the AM news station. No idea what happened. Got out of the shower. Was able to get out of the shower in time to see the second tower fall. My brother was in a meeting. My dad was in a meeting, and my mom was at Bible study. So I couldn't talk to anyone.
Yeah.
Jeez. So it was crazy. And I remember going over to my brother. My brother had a condo at the time over near the Federal Center in Lakewood. And I remember standing in the parking lot of the condo and looking up, and both of us said, there's no airplanes. There's no planes.
Yeah.
So I mean that was kind of like our big thing. And then this happens, but it's such a slow burn because we kind of saw it happening. I have my parents live in a retirement community, and my mom is immunocompromised and is in a wheelchair, had a stroke. And I remember, I should not talk to therapists on that.
You have to share if you don't want to, Dan.
It's fine. I'm fine talking about my shit. So, but yeah, like I remember my brother went to go try to see my parents at the retirement community, and he got turned away. He was so mad.
Yeah.
And now it lasted like half a day, because I get it. Like I'd be mad too.
Yeah.
But both of us now are like, oh yeah, like I'm glad they're restricting people. but it's
Yeah.
such a slow burn, and we don't know what's going to happen. We don't know where we're going.
Yeah.
Um, and this is where I go off the rails with this,
Yeah.
because I kind of use it as processing myself, being isolated.
Sure.
Um,
I think that's what we're all doing, man. That's what we're here for.
I
Yeah.
have a sheet behind me. That's all I got. I got a sheet, 2 dogs, and a wife. That's what I got.
Yeah. Yeah.
Anyways, so going through grad school during 9/11 was really strange,
Mhm.
and just trying to navigate that, and really didn't even prepare me for this.
Yeah. Well, it's just, I don't know, it's so wild. Like I think about, like the technology we have now that we can, like order groceries to our door, order food, or we can, do these things to connect and see people's faces and all that, and just thinking about previous things. Like I remember, 9/11, and it was before social media, it's before Facebook and kind of all that stuff really had taken off. And yeah, it's just kind of wild times. And I know I go through the range of emotions probably on a daily or hourly basis sometimes. And yeah, I think I heard it described of like just that right now we're just in collective grief. Like we're all in some kind of loss or grief. And the thing, that we know about grief as counselors is just how when you have one loss, it often brings up other losses. And, it's just kind of that like historical thing of kind of brings up old stuff. And yeah, and everybody kind of reacts different. And yeah, it's
Oh, I think that's a really impactful. Yeah, it does. It brings up old stuff. It brings up um, the stuff that people don't necessarily deal with.
yeah.
Because I know, like, I don't do well in isolation. I
Mm-hmm.
don't do well with, I mean, thank God my wife and I went through therapy together
Yeah.
a few years back.
Uh-huh.
So we're doing good.
Yeah.
But yeah, like, just get mad at the stupidest stuff. And
Mm-hmm.
yeah, or
Mm-hmm.
like, oh man, I haven't had panic attacks since my mom had her stroke.
Mm-hmm.
And it's fascinating because it's like, oh, this is happening. All right, well, gonna deal
Yeah.
with this.
Yeah.
Hug, butterfly hug.
Yeah. 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 It just, I don't know, it brings up all those old things. And yeah, it's been interesting. I mean, I think that's kind of what we're seeing in the hospital sometimes is especially with kids or people that have difficult family situations at home. It's
Yeah,
sort of like bringing up it's limiting some of the healthy coping and kind of outlets people would usually have to kind of navigate those challenges. And then a lot of those options are kind of limited. And so then it's kind of tapping sometimes people's resources. And so then it's kind of like, I can't take it, And so then they kind of have that emotional crisis and need to be somewhere safe for a little bit. So,
yeah, most definitely.
mm-hmm.
All right, so this is what I mean by it goes off the rails sometimes. And my whole goal was like 10 to 20 minutes, probably like an hour.
That's fine. That's fine.
All right, number 3. This is where we get into the fun stuff.
Uh-huh.
This is my wife's question
Uh-huh.
because she helped me kind of, because I knew I needed a focus and
Yeah.
not just a chat. So that's where we came up with the Fiverr.
Yeah.
Thanks, my wife, Allison. You're awesome.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, oh, by the way, Jen, you and your husband were great because I was so socially nervous during our holiday party
Oh.
in January. And then you guys were totally into me making sure that I got the phrenology head. By the way, I'll post a picture of the phrenology head.
Yeah.
Apparently, he's wearing a mask now. Yeah.
He is. I was gonna say, I was like, we really miss you in the office. It's very weird just seeing Cornelius and not seeing you.
Cornelius is my phrenology head.
Yes. Oh
He's
yeah.
a giant porcelain phrenology head. It's
For those that don't know,
amazing.
Cornelius. Yes.
All right. My wife named him, by the way.
I love it.
All right. Number 3. This is my wife's question. What is something people would be surprised or don't know about you?
Don't know. I feel like there's a lot of things I could probably say. I think what came to mind for me was that I'm kind of a personal finance nerd. Like I love, I've learned to love budgeting. It sort of came about as a necessity because when I was earlier in my own sort of journey and recovery and wellness and all that stuff, I was always an emotional shopper. And so I had a ton of debt, like ton of debt, so much. And I can remember, I kind of grew up in a family where we had enough, like, but we didn't have a lot. And like I said, I grew up in Los Angeles in Southern California in an area where it's a lot of comparison was sort of easy to happen, and grew up around a lot of people with a lot of wealth and just kind of a lot of things. And anyway, when I was in my 20s, I knew I was like, I'm in a lot of debt. This isn't good. But I still just couldn't stop myself. And so I'd read all these personal finance articles and stuff like that. And I remember when Greg and I were engaged and we were kind of doing our couples counseling and premarital sort of stuff. And I just remember having this like sinking feeling of like, oh, I have to tell him how much debt I have. Like, this is scary. But luckily he still married me. So there's that.
Well, that's good.
Yeah. But through all that, just have, finally kind of had, I think, an accountability sort of support person to help with learning to budget and all that stuff. And so, and then kind of along the lines of social work and social justice, like financial literacy is something that I think is totally something that could grow in our country. Like a lot of people don't, I never had family that told me about how to budget or any of that kind of stuff. So that's like a secret passion of mine, I guess.
Good answer.
Yeah.
I would have never guessed.
Yeah. I don't talk about it because it's like, money is one of those taboo things, and it brings up, again, kind of old stories and emotional stuff for most people. And it's like, you don't want to like.
And one of the great things is too, without talking about that, especially when you get into a relationship, it can be really tough, especially because everyone gets into relationships, want to put the best foot forward, create this sort of persona.
Yeah.
And then it's like, oh, by the way.
Yeah. Yeah.
So good for you. Good for you for doing that. I love it.
Yeah.
All right. So, well, you're lucky enough to be one of the few people. Well, I refer to it as lucky because I don't like being stuck home alone, or home with my wife and my dogs.
Yeah.
Do you like it? 33 days? A little long.
Yeah. Yeah.
What have you been streaming, reading, watching, doing, those types of things?
All the things. Definitely Tiger King, did that one for sure. I have been well, in our job that we do vacation requests like way far in advance. And so before all the COVID stuff, I was supposed to go on this awesome writers retreat off the coast of Seattle. And that
we talked about that right before
so that didn't happen, obviously. So I ended up actually having like 9 days at home where I couldn't go to work because my shifts were already covered.
Yeah.
So and I was using the vacation anyway. So I've painted almost every inch of our house. I feel like I've been doing some podcasts, listening to those. I've been trying to get out and kind of move my body, go for a walk sometimes when there's not a foot of snow on the ground.
Right. Any limbs?
What's that?
You guys lose any limbs with the snow?
Not so far. It looks like we're okay. We did last year though, right when we bought our house, like a bunch of stuff when we had that free snowstorm in May. So yeah. Yeah.
Anyways.
Yeah. And then when my husband's not around, I stream my favorite episodes of Real Housewives. otherwise.
That's right. I forgot you love Real Housewives.
I do. It's just, yeah, it's a layered, lots of layers to my love for the Housewives. But so I've been streaming some good vintage episodes, and then there's a new season that just came out of Beverly Hills, so that's been very exciting.
You watch Catfish?
I have not actually. I've heard about it, but I haven't. I probably would like it. I feel like,
Do you have Hulu?
yeah.
Yeah, it's streaming on Hulu.
Okay.
It's our
Okay.
favorite.
Okay.
My favorite part is watching Catfish, and then I'll text Allison, my wife,
Uh-huh.
and I'll be like, I need to tell you something. I'm not who I said I am. She's like,
Oh,
you are a liar. And I was like, I know. Fair.
yeah, yeah. We usually this season, this time of year, we'd usually watch American Idol with our nieces. There, we have three nieces that are all teenagers, and so they just live down the street, but I can't see them right now because of the quarantine stuff and working in the hospital. But so we've been kind of trying to like watch it and text it, kind of like live tweet it to each other, I guess, in a way. But yeah.
So, did Carole feed her husband to the tigers?
I feel like the evidence seems to lean in that direction. She was real quick to talk about sardine oil, so I feel like, yeah.
So, out of everyone that I've talked to, everyone agrees, including the one person that did not watch Tiger King, who said
It's wild. It's
he had tigers, he
yeah,
disappeared.
yeah. Oh,
So,
fascinating.
that that's one of my asides. I want to find somebody that's like, oh no, Carole totally did not do that.
Yeah,
He's down in the Florida Keys.
yeah.
He's doing fine.
He's escaped. Did I tell you that a friend of mine knew somebody that almost worked back at yeah,
Go.
yes, through the magic of social media. So my friend Amber was, I think, the first person that told me about Tiger King, I want to say. But she was posting about it and was saying how, like, it's interesting. It's just kind of a side note of like their terrible living conditions that sounded like at the place that just sounded like not safe for human habitation. But yeah, somebody she knew commented on her thread and was like, yeah, like my girlfriend and I almost went and worked there for a while, but then we saw the living conditions in the trailer and we were like, nope.
Nope. Not good at all.
Oh gosh.
Oh, all right. Well, last question. What are you doing to take care of yourself and your family during this time?
Yeah.
Self-care.
Yeah. I mean, I'm definitely keeping up with sessions with my therapist on Zoom. That's been helping. Um, I've been trying to kind of go get outside, move, and go for walks a lot of times with my dog or with my husband or both. I think just trying to keep in touch with friends. I did a Zoom like game night with some friends that are kind of all around the country, so that was fun. And I've always loved like snail mail, so I've been doing a lot of cards and postcards to people, and
Oh, nice.
yeah, kind of. Sometimes I do online shopping to kind of stress relieve and support some businesses, and I don't know. Um, I wash all my clothes as soon as I get home. Usually, we're lucky that our house is kind of set up that right when you come in off the garage, our laundry room and bathrooms in there. So I wash my hands, change out of my clothes as soon as I get home, and just try to
Keep
control
everything
what I
safe.
can control. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, good. I mean, that's the hardest thing too, especially with the anxiety and for me, the anxiety and depression of just being socially isolated is keeping a routine.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I found that being helpful. I'm not the best at it.
Mm-hmm.
My house is a mess,
Right.
but whatever.
Yeah.
We'll figure it out. So,
Yeah. Yeah.
um, well, what would you like to promote? I know you are a big supporter of one of the local it's housing. I don't really know
Yeah.
exactly what it is.
Yeah, yeah. It's called Family Housing Network. Used to be called Faith Family Hospitality. It's a local nonprofit here in Fort Collins. And yeah, they support families that are experiencing homelessness and kind of working with those families to work towards self-sufficiency. So we have a super hardworking team of 3 staff members that usually serve as many as 25 different families that are kind of going through different stages of getting out of homelessness. And so I have the honor of getting to be on the board of directors. So yeah, just
Congrats.
yeah, if folks have the financial resources to kind of donate, I know that Family Housing Network of Fort Collins can definitely use donations right now, as well as some of the other local shelters. A lot of nonprofits, like this time of year is kind of when we typically would have our big annual fundraiser events to kind of get through a lot of the
Yeah.
year financially. And so
Yeah.
yeah, just giving if people have the financial means to do so. If you don't have the financial means to donate, but have any extra supplies you could donate for all of our families that are sheltering in place at one of the local churches, they need paper towels, toilet paper, disinfecting wipes. If you still have those, they feel like magical unicorns at this point, or cleaning materials. And then just if you want to write notes to our patients at Mountain Crest, we can't have visitors right now, but they can take notes. And so if you or somebody, or you or your kids want to write notes of encouragement to our patients, we can't give you their names, obviously, for privacy
Right.
reasons. But if you want to send a little note just to encourage somebody, you could do that too.
So I'll include a link for all of that stuff
Awesome.
when I do post this. So thank you so much, Jen.
Yeah, good to see you, buddy. I love that you were wearing my favorite shirt of yours.
I know that's part of the reason why I wore it.
Love it.
I have a lot of fun shirts, so
Yeah.
I keep trying to wear different shirts. I think the one that I wore for when I interviewed Trevor had the howdy doody face, and it said, "Do you want to join my cult?" So,
Oh man.
anyways, yeah.
Love it.
So,
Well, good to see
well,
you.
you take care. Thank you so much for doing this. I appreciate it.
Yeah, sure
Um,
thing.
I'll post this. What'll happen is I'll post the kind of the raw video. I'm working on making it look a little more professional,
Uh-huh.
so I might repost it later on. But
Okay.
I'll let you know. So,
Cool. All
all
right.
right. Thank you so
Stay
much.
well. Miss you.
Bye.
Bye.